coming in here and there.
1
So
second.
what's our
here.
agenda today? We're going to talk a little bit about Richard's view, I guess your approach to managing mindset, and then we want to talk about this culprit of guilt and kind of how you've seen guilt affect people's progress and be an obstacle personally, professionally, I'm sure both. And then that'll kind of be part one. So I'll give you half of that time. And then in the second half, I want to take people through a technique with guilt to relieve guilt. And, and I'll talk about what I learned about the prevalence of guilt. So, and then where it can go both ways, right? Not enough guilt can be an issue. Too much, definitely an issue. So.
Yeah, and not only that, but in the psychological realm, it can be considered, someone could be considered a psychopath or a sociopath.
Exactly.
If they don't feel guilt at all.
If they don't have
And
enough
so
guilt.
there's a bonus little tool at the start here is if you do feel guilt, you can be grateful because that means that you're not a sociopath today.
There you go.
So, and that's a good thing, right?
Yep. Mostly.
Yeah.
I'll talk about another side of that though later.
Sure. Yeah. Because it's anything in excess can be really damaging and stuff as well too. So, awesome. So do you want me to get started from my side?
So yeah. And hopefully we'll have people joining as they join, and we'll just work with who's here and what we're doing. Thank you. So I want to introduce you though.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun to do. So Richard Haynes has been in the life coaching industry for how long? How's it been?
Ooh, I graduated from ICF in 2015. So
okay.
We're
almost
working on our 10th year.
Right yeah. Now. And what did you do before that?
I was a facilities manager, and
okay.
I managed properties and had a team and worked with a lot in the construction industry. And I found my favorite part of that was it was the people that were there that I worked with and developing the people. And I knew I had some gaps. And so I went and did a master's in business, and that's where I discovered coaching. And it was one of the option classes at the end of the program. And I just fell in love with it and was told I had some aptitude. And so and then there were some serendipitous things that happened along the way that led me to getting my certifications and eventually leaving that old career and jumping headfirst into this new one of serving and helping people and businesses.
Awesome. So yeah, and you've been successfully working with people for 10 years. I mean, this has been a full-time job for you, basically. It's your
full-time the last 6 years. It's almost 6 years. Yeah. It took me a few years to get things in order, and to gather the courage and have the right circumstances to leave my old career.
That's a huge leap. It really is. It's a big one.
Yeah, it was. I used to say, and I think this is still true, I used to say that it's the hardest thing that I've ever done. It was to do that. They're the scariest thing that I'd ever decided to do.
It's a faith promoter, right? I mean, it's a faith builder to take it full on.
Yeah, and trust. Yeah, huge amount of trust and all those feelings mixed together.
The name of your coaching company is Empowerment.
Empower Potential Coaching.
Empower Potential Coaching. There we go.
Yeah.
And you're based out of Canada, but of course, most of it's online, right? Do you do much in person?
I do a fair amount with anyone who's local. I'll have them come in. I have an office just downtown. I'm in my home office today, but because the internet's actually better at home than at that office. But I love meeting in person. I love meeting online on Zoom. It doesn't matter. You can help people just the same.
Awesome. Okay, jump in.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Well, I think as I was prepping for this, I think a good place to start is a discussion of what guilt is, like how we define guilt. Because I think most of us, when we hear the word, we think of that feeling that we have, and you know, some of us might kind of shiver, or some of us might kind of be like, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with what that feels like. I experience that quite a bit. So where exactly does it come from? And some of the things that I found in this, like from the psychological side, is that it's often related to pain that we've caused somebody else, some sort of pain or discomfort, or something that maybe has caused them to feel a sense of loss, or something along those lines. It could also be when we end up, when we do something that is against our moral code. So for instance, maybe we cheated our way to a promotion, or we felt like we've done somebody wrong in some way, or told a lie or something like that, then guilt will often show up in those circumstances. Guilt's also a natural emotional response. It's really important to understand that because we are a very social, you know, humans are very, very social. It's very natural for us to feel like if we've done something that has hurt one of our relationships, that and then that guilt is, what it's meant to do is it's meant for us to snap back and correct that, or do whatever we can to rectify that rift that might have been created by our words or actions along the way. And so in those cases, it's very normal and natural. What's not normal and natural is how long some of us tend to hold on to it. And then how that happens is interesting as well, in that we can become hyper focused on certain outcomes, and the outcomes might be to maintain and hold relationships, or have a desire to, like, we get this desire to control somebody else's actions, or have some sort of compulsion on what they're doing. And so we can actually be the perpetrator of using guilt to manipulate how they respond to us. And in those cases, that can lead down the lines to a very abusive type relationship with them. And so, and then we can also, some of us are predisposed to acting like we feel guilt because it gets somebody off of our back, or something along those lines. And so just being aware that there's all these different little nuances of when guilt can come up, I think is really important for where we need for a discussion of how do we deal with it.
For sure.
Do you have
So
any
like,
thoughts
to
that you
break
want to
that
add?
down, you said it shows up from causing other people pain, going against your moral code. Tell me, was there another like category?
Yeah, causing pain, going against moral code, or maybe being hyper focused on a certain outcome.
Oh, okay, got it. And so the
Yeah,
guilt is like, it didn't get there, or it didn't happen. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's how we might experience the guilt. And then on the flip side of that outcome is some others we might inflict a certain perspective on them that has them feel guilt, and then their actions will actually be motivated by guilt that we inadvertently created. Hopefully it's inadvertent. And and it's just really important to become aware on both sides of it, because we want our own well-being, but we also, the ecology of having the well-being of others around us be as high as it can be is also really important.
Yeah.
Because it can be a downward spiral if we get into the guilt. And I think it's, you know, we've had the discussion before of the frequency of guilt. What is it at, about a 20 or
That
something
is
like
a
that?
great question. Shame is 20, guilt is 50, I believe.
Guilt is 50.
So I
Okay.
might find it's 40 or 50. and somebody might have it, but shame is lower than guilt, but guilt is like second lowest emotion in the emotional well, which some people might be familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
Yeah.
think guilt is actually 30.
Is it 30?
It's not much higher than shame.
Even 40? Oh my gosh. Hey, there we go.
Pretty low.
Yes.
So with all this, knowing where guilt comes from and where it shows up for us and having that exploration is really important for self-awareness. But I like with where we've been trained, Cristine, with the unconscious mind and stuff, I think there is another layer deeper that we need to understand in order to get to a point where we can implement tools to help us. And the first of these is that we create or we interpret what happens to us in the world. So we're meaning-making machines as humans. We're making meaning out of everything. Even as we're sitting here in this environment on Zoom, there's a meaning that you're making. Hopefully you're not feeling guilty by any means. If you are, I give you permission to just let it go. If you needed my permission anyways, which you don't. But we make meaning out of everything. And this story, what happens is something will happen to us, and then we create a story that runs through our mental filters that we've created in our lives, whether it's how we've been brought up or modeling our primary caregivers, whatever that story is, all those mental filters, the story runs through that, and which is something that we'll often term as our moral code of what's right and wrong and what's appropriate and not appropriate. And then from all of this, remember that it's important to know that the unconscious mind is the domain of the emotions. And and our actions are always driven by those emotions. And so our interpretation of what's happening runs through these filters. And then we have some sort of motivation, whether it's to go towards pleasure or away from pain, in a very simplistic nutshell. And to do that, we might create the feeling of guilt based on how we're interpreting what's going on around us. And it's really important to understand that this is all unconscious. Like, it all happens behind the scenes. So it's not something where you as a person are flawed, or there's something broken within you. It's just this, I call it programming, that has happened since our formative years and beyond. And so that's number one, to understand about where guilt comes from. And number two is that the prime directive of our unconscious mind is to keep us safe. So its highest priority is to keep us safe. And so if in this story that we're interpreting, there's anything that might make us feel unsafe, our unconscious mind is going to automatically bring up whatever emotions it needs to keep us, to get us back in a place of safety. And so that will often bring up maybe it's guilt, maybe it's maybe it's anger, maybe it's something, but again, to get us back into a place where we interpret and feel safe again.
Yes, the unconscious mind. And and so that's interesting to think that there would be some belief somewhere that by being guilty, we are safe. Okay, where does that come from? I think it has 3 letters. It's not a 4-letter word, but it is.
It starts with an E and ends with an O, right?
Yes, exactly. The ego, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to pull something from A Course in Miracles. Is that okay? So Richard, you and I were actually on our Miracles and Meditation group last week. I think it was. It was in the last couple of weeks as we were planning for this webinar. I'm like, this is what we're supposed to talk about. And so it was fascinating because this is chapter 13 is actually called The Guiltless World. So that's literally the name of an entire chapter in A Course in Miracles. And there's a whole story to A Course in Miracles. If you want to know it, I am happy to share. But but a couple of the key points from the the section we were talking about is that love and guilt cannot coexist. That's in a section called guiltlessness and invulnerability. Guilt hides Christ from your sight. So for those who are trying to find that spiritual, true moral compass, isn't that paradoxical that guilt will hide that true vision from you? And then in the next section, it talks about everyone is seeking to escape from the prison he has made. And basically, when you find it is only a matter of time. But you can be there now. And I think that's so powerful that when you truly accept a sense of like redemption for yourself, that you are basically giving up that guilt burden. And I just think how powerful that is.
And it's actually a choice.
It is a choice. Yeah.
I think so many times in life we run around and we have reactions and we think we make up this story that this is who I am and this is just my personality and I don't really have a choice at how I feel. They're my feelings. And to a point that's true in that our reaction based on our experiences and the story that we make, that reaction is not a choice, but we have a choice of what to do with it and whether we can change it for the future.
Yeah. The natural man, the natural version of ourselves, the kind of like the default goes back to the ego though. And so it also talks about basically the ego is what will push you towards the guilt agenda. And you think about, of course, that's if it's at a 30 frequency, like it can just push you down under the, underneath. And the insanity of it. And it's kind of funny. It talks about this insane notion that attack is salvation. So that somehow beating yourself up is going to save you. Isn't that crazy how many of us do that though? Like if I just beat myself up over hurting that person, it will make it all better. Wow. Annie got a wow.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like, yes, it is ego. And some of the ego is driven by experiences that we had growing up. And so I think sometimes we get in trouble as kids, whether it's at school or home or wherever it is. And the way that we learn quickly of how to get that person who's got us in trouble off our backs is to show this remorse, to show this guilt, right, to them and to express it to them in some way. And so we've learned that the quicker that we do that, the more we get out of this pain part.
We get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plead guilty.
Yeah, plead guilty, which again, it reinforces that ego that thinks that we need to have it.
Yeah.
In order to be free.
I'm just going to read this basic. It just kind of puts it plain. The ego teaches you to attack yourself because you are guilty. And this must increase the guilt, for guilt is the result of attack. In the ego's teaching, then, there is no escape.
Yeah.
It's circular. Yeah. So there's that. So that's what's going on. Kind of, how do you think the ego and the subconscious kind of work together or work against us?
I think like a lot of it is the belief, like because the ego likes to almost bind our beliefs into this is just the way it is, and it takes away the possibility of what could be. Because the ego always has to be right. It always has to have the right answer. And it could be like having a conversation with somebody and you share your opinion and then they have a difference of opinion and what's your next, what do you feel compelled to do? The ego would drive you to go and and justify whatever your response was to them to some extent. Whereas a learner's response or a humble response would be one in which we consider very carefully what the other person has suggested.
Yeah.
And extract the learning from it.
I'd love for people to put in the chat. We haven't had people throwing stuff in the chat, but if anybody has thoughts on this, please put them in there. But I love how you said that the ego is binding the beliefs. And I think the other one is blinding. So and when you said the prime directive of the subconscious is safety, when you put the ego in charge of that safety, you will get bound and you will be blinded and you will be, under attack and all those fun things. So, and it's so interesting that, as I've done the work on the ego in my career, that I've identified it as having two sides. And I think sometimes people don't realize that when you talk about someone with a big ego, like you run into that person and sometimes that person doesn't have guilt, right? They have a big ego. They're like all about their agenda and they don't really care who they're affecting. And there's not a lot of empathy. And so I think when people see that as what the ego looks like, they also are blinded because they don't realize that the ego has this whole other side of smallness, of keeping you small, of pushing you down into that guilt and shame of, playing that role where you're kind of the captive, right? And so that's a whole nother view of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's both sides of it, and they're kind of the extreme sides, right?
Yeah, those are the extremes. Yes.
Yeah, but that's where the ego exists, is in extremes as well. Like when it comes up, often the thoughts that come up from it are, oh, my world's gonna end. How many of us who have had teenagers or have them currently
Yes.
have heard something like that? It's like, my life is over, right? Or I can't believe you did that, Mom, Dad. Why'd you embarrass me? Like all that stuff, the origins of it for us. And then it just becomes a little more complicated as adults, or we make it a little bit more complicated, but it's the same thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it gets more complex for sure. And so should we start looking at solutions?
Yeah.
Obviously, we see the problem.
Yeah, we see the problem. And I'm sure we're not alone here in seeing it on this webinar. The one tool that I wanted to give today is a tool that is called the observation deck. So
observation deck. This sounds
cool.
The
observation deck. I didn't make up this tool, by the way. Give credit where it's due to some of the other coaches that I've had to work with and collaborate with. But the observation deck is basically practicing becoming the observer of your own emotions. And you might be like, well, how do I do that? I just feel my emotions. And so this is where the practice of mindfulness or some other something along the lines of mindfulness, whether it's meditation or just becoming very present in the moment, comes into being. And one way we can practice this right now for everybody who's here is as you're sitting down, probably you're sitting down, and if you're not, is to just become aware of the big toe on your right foot. And what does it feel like? Right. And then pick some of those other spots on your body. So maybe your right pinky finger. And what does it feel like? And maybe your stomach. Often we'll become aware of that, especially after we had Canadian Thanksgiving yesterday. So especially after Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
But how about, when
do you not have a Black Friday Tuesday after? I don't know.
We have a Black Friday when you do. We've kind of adopted that.
That's
fun. But just to become aware of certain parts of your body is a good way to practice that. If you're driving in a vehicle, just become aware of the feeling of the steering wheel underneath your hands, like the next time that you drive, so you can practice that. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to become an observer of those physical sensations. And if you can become an observer of those physical sensations, then that means you can become an observer of the emotional ones too, doesn't it? So that's the tool, is to practice doing that. And then once you've done that, then you, as the observer, you'll start to see these feelings happen in real time, and you can then start to make a difference in shifting and making a different choice and saying, I wonder what it would feel like, or if I would interpret this situation differently, or I wonder what if I put this feeling in instead, how this would work for me. And then you can test and try and get closer to your goals a little bit faster. It's just like growing a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I add to that then? I love this. So the observation deck approach. So I learned that principle about the same time that you went into your life coaching training in 2015. And I learned actually from, I will share one of my favorite little resources, and it's a solution for the ego as well. It's a book called The Secret of Instant Healing by Frank Kinslow. And he has you get into, like, you want to get it an audio version, because he takes you through this process of doing all the observation you just talked about, kind of like being with your body, like left side, right ear, left ear. I mean, it's like a 20-minute guided experience. But he takes you all the way from, okay, and I'm going to tell you, this can blow your mind. This blew my mind when I did it the first time. He takes you all the way from sitting in your body to viewing yourself from the top of the room, to viewing yourself from the globe, from the earth, all the way out to the solar system, all the way out. I mean, and you go so far out. And this is, if you're not really tethered, I will say, to something, like, it starts to feel like you're floating, you're free floating, and you don't know where you are, right? I mean, as an observer, if you're not anchored into something real, like, that was a deep fear for me. Like, if you watch the movie Gravity, like, to be out in space and not tethered. And I've actually heard some people like the untethered soul as a premise, and I don't care for it. Like, I've had other people say, like, yeah, that's really not actually good for your subconscious. Like, you want to be anchored and tethered to source or to the planet, and hopefully both, right? Hopefully both. But to be completely free floating, it can be really unsettling. And so as you experience this observer idea, what I had happen, though, because I'd been through enough training in mindfulness and groundedness and embodiment, is I started to realize that I really wasn't my body, but I wasn't disconnected from my body either. It was like a really powerful moment. Like, I wasn't identified by a physical form, but I had true form. Does that make sense? And just sit with that, it's like these two kind of contradictory things. Like, I'm not form and I am form, or I'm not held by form, but I'm not, and I'm not formless. And so it's just this sense of, like, really, like, the most powerful phrase we've heard is I am that. And it's that I am. It's that true I am. And to be able to get to that through what you're talking about, observation deck, means that you are not just in this form experiencing this independently of all. You're part of the all.
we were talking about ego a little bit earlier because that's a part of what holds us back. I think like as you were saying that, the thought came to me that the ego is very all about just being wrapped up in
Limit,
myself.
limitation.
But it's just me, right? It's how you're making me feel. It's how I feel like about the world and stuff. But what you just described is recognizing that we're connected outside of that as well, and seeing that I'm a part of this greater whole, and that this greater whole is influenced by how I think and feel and act. And I think that's another way to help get out of the ego is to
be part of
to
the
lift
all.
up.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure it is. Exactly. I'm glad you brought it back to that. Because in this book, he also does address the role of the ego and the role of the all and the power of, and in the idea of quantum entrainment. And that's when I first learned about quantum entrainment is connecting to the all in a way that healing can be instant. And that's really what A Course in Miracles is talking about. It's like, once you get out of the way, like everything's possible. It's all there. And so just get out of the way of yourself, really is all you got to do. And, but there's so many layers to that, right?
Oh yeah.
It can just happen.
But it's
So-
interesting how simple the solution is, but the journey to undo a lot of what has created our facade, or
Yeah.
and gotta be careful. I call it that way too easily. But I probably a better word for facade is our perceived reality. Like what we perceive as is real around us is something that it's different for every person, which then, I mean, if we were to follow the logical steps, because it's different for every person, that means how I perceive it, therefore isn't in actuality what is real.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's just perception. So
Yeah, it's
exactly.
just a perception.
Yes. So now let's segue a little bit with this topic of, the quantum thing. So let me just give you a little bit of background on my training. I recognize a lot of people here, but there's a few new faces, which is lovely. So I was working in private practice in 2015, and that had been a journey through my own recovery from addictions. I'd been a substance abuse counselor. I'd also been a school psychologist, and I got my master's in psychology, and I really did love the power of like research and numbers. And, I was a numbers geek, which is why that was my field. And so I was enjoying what I was doing, and I also wanted more. And I see Tamara Lang on here. So at that time, I was also poring over her research and deep dive into, the belief systems, the value compass of, the Christian faith, as well as like the New Age science, and paralleling those. And I just wanted more. And so in 2015, I also enrolled in Quantum University. And so that's when I began my journey into what was going to be the next phase of my career. And so now I have my doctorate in natural medicine, with that emphasis basically on the quantum science behind healing, which makes it kind of unique. What's even more unique is I'm probably only one of a handful of mental health practitioners that went into Quantum University for that training. It's generally like 95% are in the medical field, chiropractics, naturopathic, that kind of route. But the mental health field has been, it's been saturated by so much. I mean, like, it's just overflowing with need right now. And there's a lot of practitioners, there's more and more colleges, you could say, but the question I'm having is, are we fixing it? Are we really improving people's well-being? And so my mission, and I've been working on identifying this very clearly for people, but it's been a journey, is to raise the frequency of mental health. I focus on Utah, but I would love to see it go further. to create more accountability in the mental health world, and to basically create a holistic model that is accepted fully, which a holistic model is that we're dealing with the physical side of the condition, which we don't always see, and the spiritual, all the way to the spiritual, which is not addressed, is not included well in the mental health field. So that's what I'm about. And I've managed to, I guess, write a couple books on that. 10 Ways to Balance Your Brain Chemistry is coming out in its 4th edition, like this week. So that's fun. And then a book called 4 Bodies, 4 Medicines, which is included with it, that basically goes through these 4 arenas of holistic medicine. And I think what people don't realize is, like, there's a difference between energy medicine or vital body medicine, like you'd see in acupuncture, and in quantum medicine. And that's kind of an interesting discussion. So some of that comes out we have a 2-day event we want to tell people about before we go too far and forget, but it starts next Tuesday and Wednesday. So Tuesday is the 22nd, and Wednesday the 23rd. It is 6 hours. It's noon to 6 on both those days. And day 1, we talk about the emotional frequencies. So when we talked about, like, where does guilt fit? We talk through that. We talk about the love solve method a little bit, which is a solution, working with that negative emotional well to do some healing. We also go through 0-point Meridian, and we're going to do a little bit of that today. I'm going to share that tool. And then we also go through, on day 2, we go into the quantum solutions a little bit. So it's like a mini version of the Love Solve Academy, which, apologies for the passcode. It was LSA for Love Solve Academy, and I changed it too late. I'm sorry. It's what we now have as available to people to basically, I guess, augment other trainings, but also for some, it could be a full, like, practitioner model training. Our academy is, I found these things, and Richard and Andrea are new students of this. They're going to add a lot of these training certifications to what they're doing. And I'm excited because we can take that a lot further, I think, when we have more in a team together. So there we go.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, so far with the academy? What were the reasons that you felt drawn to that?
I think Andrea's on this call. Like, I think a lot of it is for us. But I love how you, with your knowledge and your education, kind of normalize some things that a lot of people don't really understand, that aren't considered mainstream in Western medicine or Western society. And I value that language, having kind of worked in that with some of the techniques and tools that I have worked in that area a little bit. And I'm always one who's looking for more tools to be able to serve and help. And along the way, of course, there's my own personal growth that it's part of it. Like, if it's my goal to serve and help others to achieve their potential, then I feel like I have a duty to do that for myself.
Yes, you have to keep up leveling. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Perfect answer. I love it. That is what I hope to see. And what I feel was missing in my own master's level training in psychology, there was a lot of ego in that department. They did not like the discussion of emotional intelligence. That was off-putting to them. There was not a sense of community or safe, space for real discussion about what's really, what really matters. There was no room for spirituality or emotional intelligence. And so it was kind of like, here's how you do it. Here's the numbers, go forward. and it was so pathology based, very much, like a disease model. And so for me, to create something different, I had to go and do my own work first. That's what I had to do first. So well before 2015, I was stepping into arenas that were well outside of academia. I have like a whole list of things I did, you know, like vision training and life coaching kind of stuff, and neurolinguistic programming, which I think you have a background in, going to hypnotherapy, having my own hypnotherapy sessions to uncover my subconscious, right? And I love that you're a hypnotherapist, got a background
Yes.
in NLP, and you managed to get, like, it only happens probably every once in a while that somebody who's not a clinician gets EMDR certified. So that's awesome. And those are powerful tools. So how much have we done with 0 Point Meridian? Have you gone through that much?
I haven't yet.
You haven't?
Andrea's taught me the one thing that
Oh,
you
in the
taught me,
Rise
so,
event.
yeah.
Yeah, she did a little bit in
But-
there.
but that's it. That's, yeah.
So we get to do it. Should we do it? Right now?
Sure.
Okay, perfect.
Do we do it with just us, or do we invite everybody else on the call?
We're going to invite everybody to join us, but we're going to take the issue of guilt, because I think we can all relate to that. So what we're going to do is pinpoint something that I love your 3 areas. So if you've hurt somebody and you can relate to that, and you like have that sense of like, yeah, I just feel sick in my stomach, right? There's one area. If you've done something that's kind of like against your moral code and you're like battling this inner conflict, okay? If you're hyper focused on an outcome and you're not meeting it, and you just feel, and I almost think shame is kind of more the feeling I would say with that. Like, so we could go with either, right?
I think they're siblings, guilt and shame.
They are siblings. I would agree. Yep. So pick those areas, or one of those areas, and then really tune into it, like kind of check in with your body. This is where you can still be on the observation deck, but you also kind of want to like tap into like, where does it hit you?
Yeah.
And rate it on a 1 to 10. So this is called a SUD score. And I know Richard has a background in SUD scores because he did some EMDR training. So that's where it comes from. But it's like, literally, I was like, I look back at our home, all of my mental health training, and very rarely did I get a tool that I could measure pre and post. And a SUD score, like, I think that's why EMDR is like so big, because they have this really simple way of like, do you get better or not? And they measure it consistently. And now they have data, you know, like mind blown. So it's like so obvious. So I took that model and I used that in creating 0 Point Meridian. So I was trained in EMDR in 2009. But I was trained in EFT is kind of the origin. Thank you guys. I'm seeing you put your numbers in there. Good job. Or I see invitation. Put your numbers in the chat. Okay. So your SUD score is on a 1 to 10. 1 is peace, 10 is panic. So 10 is like, or it could be like, if it's guilt, it's like it's incapacitating. Like you don't want to get out of bed because you're going to step out on the wrong side. So, okay, on a 1 to 10. Notice where that sits for you. All right, we got a number. Good job. So yeah, so we're basically rating this, and it's been really cool to do 0 Point Meridian in groups and then see change like right in our webinars even. It's fun. And we do this, like I said, in our Rise event too. Okay. So we're going to go through the process, and you'll just follow along with me, but you do want to kind of get clear on like what is a word or emotion or sensation that you can identify. So it could be like, even though I had this pit at the bottom of my stomach. So you're going to do an even though statement, or even though I don't want to get out of bed because of guilt, or even though my guilt is all consuming. So you want to kind of create like that kind of verbiage around it, a little bit of like an emotional charge. There we go. We're looking for emotional charge. Okay. Even though I can't do another day of this, what, that's stuff. Okay. Does everybody have something they can do here? So I'm just going to say it, even though I have this guilt and shame. But the more emotional charge you can bring to this, the better. Because what we want to do is we want to actually surface the charge as much as possible, because that's what we're going to neutralize. Okay. And especially if this is a chronic thing, this is, if you have a chronic issue, plug that in there. Even though I have chronic guilt or chronic lack of success syndrome. Okay. You're going to tap on a point. So this is your small intestine meridian. So if you're familiar with EFT, so emotional freedom technique, this is the same point. So 0 point meridian uses the same meridian points as EFT. There's a difference in our alignment statement. So we use something called the alignment statement instead of a setup statement. And the alignment statement parallels some of the love, solve, well, which is the positive well of gratitude, forgiveness. There's some, if you look at the bottom of the emotional frequencies, you've got guilt and shame, right? Well, at the top, you've got forgiveness, gratitude, love. Okay, so we're going to use a statement that includes all these positive high frequencies. And there's some quantum stuff to it. I'll tell you more about that at the Rise event. So, okay, we're going to tap right here. So this small intestine meridian it's connected to like your shoulder blade. It runs off your pinky. Okay, you're going to tap right on the side of your palm. And I use my dominant hand on my other hand. And you don't have to pound it. Just lightly. It's fine. Unless you're releasing anger. Okay. All right. Even though I have this, and you fill in the blank, guilt and shame, chronic success, lack of success syndrome, whatever you want to call it. I love and accept myself completely with infinite love and gratitude. I release and forgive. You're going to hold this hand, palm, side of palm. You're going to breathe in. And then we're going to do an interesting exhale. We're going to actually push the air out of your solar plexus. And exhale as much as you can. And then some. So I actually call that weeding. So our goal is to actually weed out this guilt and shame. And we're going to assume it goes all the way to here at least, which is why we're pushing in that solar plexus. So we're going to get that tap root, right? So kind of envision that when we do it one more time. Okay. Even though I have this chronic guilt and shame, I love and accept myself completely. With infinite love and gratitude, I release and forgive. Deep breath. And big exhale. Imagine that weed coming all the way out by the root. Now, I may have just felt this for myself, but I may have felt it for somebody else. It was kind of like when I said that, it was like, oh, but I better hold on to at least a little bit so I'm not sociopathic. Anybody feel that? So I'm going to address that. And I'll share this one little thing. What I learned and I share this in frequency school. It's part of a training that we do where we talk about the off balance relationships. And you have some of these where you've got somebody who's highly compassionate, highly giving in a relationship with somebody who's just a lot of taking and lacks compassion. Okay, so you see these dynamics. They're kind of painful. And what I've seen is that it's when there's what will happen in a relationship is whatever we haven't processed and resolved within ourselves, we will attract it outside of us. So if we have not resolved this little piece that, it's like, I can't be that, or, I am not that. If I am not that, we'll probably get in a relationship with that. Because whatever that mirror is, we're saying, well, I'm going to push that away. It will come right up to us to say, oh, you're pushing me away? Let's talk about that. Right? And it will become like so undeniable, so like unavoidable that you have to deal with it, right? So it's just an interesting thing to notice is that if you're not really clear on what your subconscious is holding on to, well, just look out there. It'll probably pop up. And so anyway, so let's just do this final layer, whatever it is I can't see or I won't let go of. Okay. So and we're going to kind of tie that together with whatever's not clear. Okay. Even though I'm still holding on to or not, let's see, is it holding on to or not seeing? Even though I'm not letting go of, even though there's still likely something I am not letting go of or not seeing with my guilt, I love and accept myself completely. With infinite love and gratitude, I release and forgive. And you do a deep breath in and really let it go. And I will warn you, this may mean you'll have a dream or you'll have some sort of thought come up that's like, oh, that's a horrible thought. And here's my challenge to you is rather than go into an auto mode with it, consider the observation deck. Just observe, like, oh, isn't that interesting? I had that dream. No judgment. Oh, isn't it interesting that here I am seeing this now or having that thought? Just be curious. No judgment. Okay. So we're going to do one last thing, and that's what we're going to do. Is this is a part of our technique as well. And we're tapping across the two hemispheres of the brain, which creates an interesting like connection, kind of like an energetic connection, integration, really. And so we're going to tap back and just say something like, what is the opposite of not judging? Accepting. We do that. Okay, so here's our statement. I'm ready to accept me. I'm ready to accept me and all that I am. All that I am. And so my guess is we are all going to notice dark and light, because that is, oh, I heard a namaste at my silent retreat last weekend. It was a different namaste. Usually we hear namaste as, the higher in me, the highest in me bows to the highest in you. So this was the namaste of my retreat. The dark and light in me bows to the dark and light in you. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because we are all that. Okay, so there's the technique. Would you please put back in your ratings? Do you love it? Really loves it. Okay, so put back in your ratings. Let's see if anybody dropped a little. Check in with yourself as we did that technique. Try to go back to that original like guilt charge. Remember the charge? and see if it has shifted. Yay, Andrea went down to 2.5 points. It's fabulous. Or was that 2.5? Yeah. Very good. Okay, as you're putting your numbers in, there is a link. We'll put it back in, but it is the link to the Rise 2-day event. I might actually pull up the, let me see if I can find it. Oh, Joanne, maybe, I don't know. Do you have the landing page handy? Or Annie? I could introduce Annie. We'll take 2 extra minutes if it doesn't mind too much. So Annie is the CEO of the Love Solve Academy, and she came on in May, June. And we have done some work to create this thing. It's a 4-month program, the Love Solve Academy. And so just last month, we did our first Rise event. So this is like just a really powerful 2-day event that takes people through like a mini version, like a little bit of a taster of the Academy. And Annie, do you want to say anything else about it? I don't know if we have.
If you enjoy just getting a taste of today, you're gonna love the 2-day event. It's just a little bit deeper taste of each of the different phases that we walk through in the Love Self Academy. So we look at frequencies. When we were talking about shame and guilt, where are they at? We look at defining that more. We look at how do we release those things, and then how do we use the quantum wholeness meditation and 0-point meridian techniques on a more personal level. So it's an amazing 2-day event, and it's actually such a steal.
Oh, it's a steal. We didn't talk about the price of it.
So the price is really, it's almost $1,000 program that Cristine is graciously agreed to deeply discount. So more than 90%, it's $47, you guys. $47.
So did we decide their page would be, oh, here, I can open it up because it's in the chat.
Oh, you know what? We have to make it special. I believe it is.
Because we had it listed for 97 because we had
Yep, and now we just
shift in price. And then here we are. Is it right there? Okay. So it is, oh, we have a December date on here now too. And so October 23rd to 22nd, December 10th and 11th, 12 to 6. We do like a quick uploading of the content, of the days. And so you can catch it up pretty fast. And so there we go. The first day we go over like that frequency model, a little bit on the Love Solve method. You're going to learn the well. You're going to actually get this book here, which was the book that over 1,000 of my clients were, that was what was the most important in my private practice. And it was the thing I didn't learn in grad school. I laugh about that. Anyway, so the importance for taking responsibility for your emotional state to create positive change, all that good stuff. Oh, you get a quick frequency assessment score. So we look at 5 life areas and get your frequency scores in those areas. So do we have that on here? That is not on here. So your physical, emotional, psychological, your spiritual, financial, career, and relationships. And you get a score on those. And then we do a little quick session with you to look at what one thing could help elevate you to the next level. And then day 2, we do a little 0-point meridian, I think on day 1, but we review it on day 2. We have a little piece in there from Tamara as well, which is really good. That was the breakthrough for one of our people that attended last time. I think if it's in here. Oh yeah, she's just like tells the story like Tamara Lang introduced me to the idea of generational cycles, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I've been struggling with a low frequency habit for over a decade. I started to lose hope in ever changing. I don't know if you know this, Tamara, that one thing that you did last month changed a life. In that 2-day seminar, I learned several techniques that gave me hope. I cried with relief. What I learned helped me begin alleviating the emotional pain, and I looked forward to more help to fully heal. Yeah. So That's in there, as well as discussion more on the quantum solutions. And that's really like my husband. I have a man in my life that only when Richard was talking about like all these things that can happen that can change you, it just took him 25 years to change overnight. Right? We laugh. So he had 25-year basically addiction, and it wasn't until he found the quantum solutions that it was like it finally turned that thing around. And I think that's what brought us together, is our quantum backgrounds. So there's a little bit there. Oh, you have access, and it is a live training, and you get a copy of this book. Okay, y'all got it? So if you can't do October, we hope to see you in December. And yeah, we were going to do 97 and take $50 off on a coupon, but we just did 47 to make it really easy. There we go. All right.
Hey,
Okay, any last
Christine,
moments? Yeah.
would I be muddying the waters if I give one more bonus,
Oh, give a bonus.
little
Let's do it.
bonus tool?
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about this today, and highly recommend the program that Christine just talked about. My bonus is, like, when you think about, because a lot of us just had guilt move quite a bit. So when it comes up, just a really quick way, if you're just in the moment with something, is to ask yourself, when has guilt ever moved things forward for me?
Good question.
And so if you need the extra power to just choose to let it go, then just ask yourself that. I have yet to meet a person who has been able to answer that and say that it has actually moved them forward.
Yeah, you're right.
It's meant as just a correction mechanism. It's a natural correction mechanism, but I think sometimes we hold on to emotions too much, so much that we think that we're upsetting the memory or denying the memory of a person or something, and so we hold on to it. But there's no need. We're meant to flow, meant to have things flow, emotions. Anyways, I don't mean to take away from what you just talked about, because that's super important. So
No, thank you. It was a perfect
Yeah.
way to like just kind of sum up another like just basic, simple thing. Love it. Yeah. And the questioning the subconscious, kind of like the observer, and being curious is like, yeah, like asking the right question can really give you a different answer, right? That's kind of like a perception shift. Just shift your question. And it could be not just like, when has guilt ever pushed me forward? It could be asking yourself the question, what's a better way to move me forward?
yeah, and that'll take you to the next level.
That would,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so good to have you. Oh,
Thank you for
Richard will
having me.
also be appearing on the Expert Summit coming. So keep watching your emails for further information. At the end of November, we're going to have like a very epic mega event before our Thanksgiving. So yeah, it'll really up the gratitude, up the frequency. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. We'll see you again.
Thanks so much.